Ready?
That's exactly what we're writing.
My cell time says 6.
I got room.
That's too.
That's cool.
That's universal time.
What
do you guys do?
I think we need.
Your house?
Biff has got a pretty good idea. Should do it separate. It's not the same stuff.
Oh, we're right at that. All right. Thank you all. It is 6 PM, and I will call this special meeting of the Board of Education to order. If you would all join me in the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please take the roll.
Christopher Abel.
Here.
Rick Hansen. Matthew Phipps. Keith Shaw.
Here.
Matthew Spalding.
Here.
Carrie Trask.
Here.
Tony Costello.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. For the special meeting, we have only two things on our agenda. Two items of business on our agenda. Let me be more specific. I apologize for that. The first one is the acceptance of the bus transportation of ownership, which I think somebody put in as a pun.
Yeah, really.
Since it's bus and it's transportation of ownership. So, has everybody seen the documents? Do you need a brief summation of what we're talking about here? Board members, or are you all good?
It doesn't change our arrangement, does it?
No. No. But they're looking to have that finalized no later than December 2nd, which is why we needed to address it now. So
I make a motion to transfer the ownership.
Second.
a motion, we have a second. Thank you, gentlemen. Any other discussion?
Wasn't it approved in committee, so why would it need a motion in a second?
Actually, my motion in committee was to recommend for approval by the board. So,
Mr. President, I will just let everyone know too, in at the time this letter was penned on November 18th, Mr. Reckley indicated in the letter it would be December 2nd of a final. I did receive a text message from him today, and he just wanted me to convey, first of all, his appreciation for your action, but also that they did move the official date that they'll finalize the sale to January 2nd for some accounting purposes. So he just wanted me to pass that along.
It's gonna be taxes.
Yeah.
But it does require the full board to approve the change, so.
So do we need to change this document to reflect that, or?
No. Since on that date it was accurate.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that is approved. Next, we have the facilities plan / possibly recommendation, which comes via a minority opinion from the Facilities and Finance Committee. Mr. Shaw?
The motion that went to a minority, motion read like this. A motion to direct the administration to prepare a resolution and debt structure for a long-term borrowing of $25 million to cover the cost of critical maintenance and facility upgrade within the Mantua Public School District. That was the initial motion. It was amended by Tony to add this last statement, and will not add to the tax levy. That came as an addendum to this original motion after his conversation that probably only he and Ken understood, but that's the amendment that was accepted. So the motion read again, is to prepare a resolution and debt structure for a long-term borrowing of $25 million to cover the cost of critical maintenance and facilities upgrade within the Manitowoc Public School District and will not add to the tax levy.
Are you moving that now?
I am making that motion again, yes.
Okay, so there's the motion. Do we have a second for that motion?
I'll second it for discussion.
Okay, so we have a second for discussion. You've sort of spoken to it, but I don't want to prohibit you from speaking more to it if you wish, because that's normally the process. The mover gets to speak first and then the second.
No, no.
You're good? Okay.
I seconded it because what I'd like to do is amend it. The proposal that's coming forward, and my amendment will be to remove the $900,000 from the baseball field. And send a request to the Finance Committee for discussion and development of a grant or a promise to the baseball field remodeling project, not to exceed $900,000 from the fund balance. And the MPSD would consider that when there was a demonstrated support from the public. Like, and I've shared this kind of with the Rubeck Field project, that money was raised for that project. And when the project is moving along, the district saw some things they'd like to finish, and they spent some money to finish that project at Rubeck Field. And I guess I'm looking at this the same way, that we are willing to stand behind for up to $900,000 from the fund balance when there is that demonstrated support from the community. And my hope would be the district would step in that time and finish the project if they need to.
I'll second the motion.
So wait, you're amending,
To pull out the 900.
my motion was to do this, but you're amending to pull the 900,000 out of my existing motion.
Right.
I'll accept that amendment.
Question?
Hold on. We have a motion, we have an amendment and a second over here, so.
This is clarification. Does that mean 25 becomes 24.9 on one? Or is it still 25 million?
25.
I would hope it would drop it 900,000 if we're not putting that in.
Okay.
I'm just asking.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying that we would
I
subtract.
was gonna ask the same one, so don't. Yes, sir.
I was just gonna bring up that the baseball team already raised $300,000 from the community. I didn't know if you knew that or not, but
They didn't.
they did.
They did.
They have $300,000 that has to be spent by the end of 25.
It's continued. Yeah.
And I believe that it's critical that we find a way to get that funded as soon as possible to give them enough time to complete the project and be able to get it done this year. Because if they don't get it done this year, then that $300,000 they've already raised is basically gone.
Was that from
This is from the West Foundation.
West Foundation? Yeah.
Yeah, so it has some contingency to it with timeline. And, I personally also like the idea of a fund balance, but I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of that. And I believe the way I understood it when they came to the committee last week, and Keith, you're different, or Matt, let me know, but they felt once they got the 900K from the board approved, that it would be much easier to get the rest of it. And we could end up with 1.8 to probably 2.5 million plus worth of baseball.
I'm assuming if they run the same type of process that the football field people did, and the board, I don't think promised anything for that project. But at the end, they finished it. The money was raised in sponsorships from local businesses. And then the school board said, well, there must be a worthy project, so the community is behind it. And I think, let me say this, I think this is a need because the baseball field is the city didn't put anything into it. And it was kind of the same situation with the football field. It needed a new track, so they asked us if we wanted it. Baseball field needs work. For us to say we're going to spend money on that when we have so many needs right now for buildings and educating kids, that was one of the reasons people were saying you can't put that in a referendum. The referendum is basically to get our buildings safe and places to learn. This is important because the baseball field is needed, but there's a difference between education and this. So if we can see that project by the community to come together, the West Foundation, and I understand there's some businesses out there willing to do some work. If we can see that, then after talking to Ken, I think Fund 10 would be the place that we can take.
Fund balance.
Fund balance, I'm sorry, would be the place we can take that money and then help them complete this project.
I'm gonna
I
take
am
Mr.
the-
Shaw, who's really been waiting.
Okay, go ahead, Keith.
Tony is correct. The West Foundation gave them the $300,000. There have been people in the community who have promised support to do things, but he's absolutely correct. They're looking for the district's support so that they can continue their fundraising. In essence, it's a stamp of the district's approval for them to do fundraising. But reflecting back on that football field, the board at that time told the committee that was running that football project, we will take care of the bleachers on the visitors, we will take care of the lighting, and we will take care of the sound system. That was a promise of the board at that time. So they then could go out in the community and say, board, this is what the Manitowoc Public School District has offered in financing. Let's start with the fundraising. Same, similar pattern. The Wests have given the $300,000. People in the community have given their support, but what's the board going to do? It's the same scenario. Towards the end, the field, they did not get quite what they anticipated, so the board kicked in out of fund balance the remainder to finish the project. So the board totals project, and talking to President Longmire back then and also past presidents, the total project that the board kicked in out of fund balance was 1.2 million total project. The lights, the sound, the bleachers, the upgrades to the concession stand, and a little bit more to finish that field was the total project. So he's right on. They were looking for this board now, as they were looking at that board back then, to say, we believe in the project, we'll help you.
Yes.
Thank you.
I want to speak in favor of the amendment. I think it's this request for a large chunk of money by a group of people that came in, when we were dealing, a year ago with another tight budget, et cetera, and made a presentation and said they would raise $3 million. Well, I more power to them, but they haven't done that. And I've been associated with a number of fundraising projects, including the public library. And honestly, we had to, it took us three years in order to raise the money to build the library. And it really does require work. And I don't know how much work has gone into the campaign to raise money at this point, but I don't want to be the Salvation Army for this project. I mean, we're talking about nearly $1 million compared to the $300,000 they've raised from the West Foundation. The West Foundation, if they raise money and show that there is actual support for this, the West Foundation, when that happens, we'll give them the $300,000 again. But the other thing is that we've kind of gone around lately and tried really hard to get a balanced budget. We're not a wealthy district, and we have a whole lot, as was presented in the public hearing or the public presentation of this. We've got a whole lot. We've got millions and millions of dollars that we are going to have to find a way to acquire in order to get our buildings up to a safe level and an adequate level to run a school system in. So I just don't think the baseball team thing, boy, it's a good program. They played last year. They almost made state on that field that is inadequate. But nevertheless, I think we really have to be honest with our priorities. I mean, I think the two big priorities that we have right now is to somehow find a way to repair the buildings and become a school district that fulfills expectations. I mean, at this point, we should feel a little bit of an embarrassment about the academic health of the school district. And I just don't think a wannabe project like the baseball field should even be on the priority list at this point.
That's why he's pulled it.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to say that I kind of agree with kind of both sides, but when it comes to this the baseball diamond, our funding that we use for everything that we're doing comes from students coming here. You know what I mean? We're getting state funding for every student, for people, all that other stuff. That's where we get our money. And the baseball program that we have is so exceptional that it, whether you believe it or not, it draws people to here. I mean, it's one thing that people see. Now, I understand we didn't make it to state, but I can just say NOAA, and most people know exactly who I'm talking about. I mean, we have that reputation of having a great baseball program here, and I think that that's something that we should make sure is taken care of. So, I mean, but I totally agree where we're getting at. Is there something that we can do where we are taking that from fund balance, but not removing it? The only reason why I say that is because I thought the numbers for the capital improvements that we needed were much higher than this. So I'd imagine we're cutting it close anyway.
My understanding is this is the first
Installment, yeah.
phase of what we need to do.
Okay, all right. I mean, whatever, yeah, go ahead.
I agree completely, and I don't know if there's anybody in this room that bleeds red and white more than I do.
All right, I agree. I'm sure you probably do.
But the buildings have to come first.
Absolutely.
And to be honest, what did we have this year? Another 10% increase in.
But that's why you hold it in fund balance.
That's what it was projected, but on the actual.
Good. I mean,
It's more.
and
I just got it.
we have needs that we're asking taxpayers to fulfill. We got to target the schools first. And the idea of sending it then to finance is, okay, come up with a plan to say, if you reach this level of donations from the community, then the district will give a grant, or we promise we will throw in this much money so they can plan on it. And you are absolutely right that a good facility is needed. I don't know a city this big anywhere. I don't know a high school this big anywhere in the state of Wisconsin that has a facility like we do.
What do you mean, the baseball field?
Yeah. I mean, it needs to be updated to 2025 standards. But let's do that in a way that if we're asking taxpayers to vote on a referendum to fix buildings, it's very clear that that's what we're doing educationally on the referendum. And we will use that fund balance. That is money that over the years has been accumulated and is there and will be close to our limit, but Ken said we should be okay if we went that way.
Just to clarify I apologize, just to clarify what I was, when it comes to this referendum, it's my understanding, and tell me if I'm wrong, that we're seeking, it would be a public vote, because we're borrowing more than $1 million. But it is something that we are not asking them to pay. Am I correct? Is it something that are we figuring out to budget within our own budget? Or is that something that does not affect the tax levy?
That's what the motion was.
Are you asking, can I speak?
Oh, yeah, leave it on.
Well,
It's pretty far from the amendment, but let's get there because I knew it's going to come up.
So the answer to your question, I said to Tony, he asked at the finance committee meeting and that we can make it work within the budget so it doesn't affect tax levy. Tax levy went like this last 2 years.
Right.
We think we can drop it down and make up for the difference in that. Plus, how we pay our debt back and structure it in such a way that it's not all upfront, it's more backloaded. So in essence, we could not negatively affect tax payers in the district. At least that's the plan I have. And I'd move forward with it. Now, that being said, right now I'm just an interim, so I could be gone, a month from today, tomorrow, if they say yes, go. But there again, I have a plan. I have a plan that, yes. So an example, good example is save by $25 million and the rate comes in at 4% as such or whatever. Then that interest, we just say, hey, we'll pay the interest, cut some of the things, because we're overstaffed. We think we can drop down our costs enough to pay for that interest. And then pay some of the principal, then say, pay interest and some of the principal. And then backload some of that as we even out the tax levy. And that's the plan I see. Technically, we were supposed to do that 3-4 years ago, do the plan when I left. It was put out there for a number of years. Hey, we're gonna borrow because our long-term debt's gonna drop off to nothing. So right now, we don't have any long-term debt.
Right.
And so, but we didn't structure it in such a way, so we let it drop, and now we're pushing it up, and it's like, okay, the idea of even using fund balance and all that is a levy, trying to make the levy kind of even. So it doesn't, you don't see this all the time.
I'd appreciate
And
it.
right, last three years, it's been going like that, and I like to level that off, and I can do it within the structure that we set up. So to answer your question, is that it's possible to do it.
Right. And I would just add too, and I thank Ken for the explanation of that. The other thing to strongly consider, I think, as we look at this as a whole is we have an estimated property value for insurance purposes of $338 million as a district. Currently, we spend $1.2 million in maintenance. That isn't enough. Our CISA 10 study showed and told us that for a district with this type of valuation in our current structure, it should be somewhere between $4 and $6 million. So the other thing that Ken has done is we're going to incrementally plan to increase the maintenance budget by $500,000 a year, so that until we hit the level of us, because what we want to be able to also tell the public is we are going to take care of things as they happen instead of letting things build up. Any homeowner knows that little problems become big problems and expensive problems if they're not taken care of. And if you even consider the 1.2 million out of $338 million, of what we have, we're well below 1%. And today we just looked into, according to State Farm Insurance, the average homeowner pays 1 to 4% a year on maintenance in their home. And if we just cast that forward, that's probably right about where CISA 10 is telling us that we should be. So just so you know, as a board, we're going to be long-term planning to make sure that that maintenance budget comes up to where it needs to be to take care of the investments that we're making on our facilities.
Is this to the amendment?
This is in regards to the amendment.
Okay, because I want to get back to the amendment so
Sure.
that we get it resolved.
Carrie, I will not disagree with you. We need that. We need the referendum to do our buildings. We need to pull my estimation. I agree with the gentleman over there to pull it to fund balance because it's not affecting the tax levy. That way we can do that. But in November of 22, it had to be you four gentlemen that bars agreed to us taking over that stadium. That reminds me again of what happened when we took over municipal football field. The city didn't want it. They wanted it off their tax. So in the Krupa administration, they put a plan together with the agreement that Manitowoc Public School District gets the field, Manitowoc Public School District gets all of the maintenance, Manitowoc Public School District is responsible for all of the groundwork, the fertilization, the mowing, the pitch to the field because it was a bloody mess and it wasn't draining, so they put in the city didn't want that. The only stipulation was that Roncalli got to use it for free. They paid no electric bills, no plumbing bills, nothing, okay? So the city is now giving us this field for the same thing. It needs work.
Sure.
We have a quality baseball team, and you watch the people in the outfield are more worried about tripping over ruts and guts and gullies and irregular ground when they should be concentrating on catching the ball. We see our coach out there mowing the yard because there's no maintenance people. The city doesn't supply the maintenance to mow the outfield during the doubleheader. The 3 outhouses, and I've been there many times, sit behind the the stadium or the bleachers. And I'm not going to be lying that if there's a doubleheader, we better tell our guests to bring their own toilet paper and hand wash, because those outhouses, those porta toilets stink. They run out of toilet paper. Now that's going to be our responsibility to, during the doubleheader, come in there and clean up those outhouses or those porta toilets. It's our responsibility to make sure they're loaded with toilet paper. Because on a good sunny afternoon and there's a doubleheader, the women go to the bathroom and there is no toilet paper. And my wife will attest to that. So the city has given us this property. It's now ours to maintain. So I don't think the taxpayers should have it on our borrowing program either. It's there in fund balance. They need a commitment from the board. I support the positions over there that this is something that they need to say the board is willing to commit, start the fundraising, and that's how I view it.
I'm certainly not against adequate toilet paper. But I just want this to be separate from the building thing. I mean, I'm all in favor of a good baseball field, but I think that we, number one, have to meet with the people that told us they were going to raise $3 million and say, come on, get to work. And, this isn't like a free lunch, I guess.
I think the way for us is we have a commitment to say to get to work.
Yeah, so I just think that's a different kind of business than the borrowing the money to fix the buildings. I think we need to be pure on that, and we need to be real transparent with the public. And I think the baseball field looks like it's been snuck in there, like some kind of bill in Congress that's got pork in it. So I just want to be straight on, and don't put me down as somebody that's against the baseball field. I'm just against it in this context.
Mike, I'm curious, what did that study we got from CISA, how much did they say that we had in critical maintenance?
48 million.
48 million? Okay, and we're asking for 25 million, right, on the
Yeah.
borrowing referendum? So, just knowing that we're already kind of cutting it down to the bone here as far as critical maintenance goes, my humble suggestion is, why not do both, right? Why not borrow the 25 million? Because we have more than $25 million in identified critical maintenance. And I think we all know that between now and if and when that borrowing referendum passes, we're probably going to have more stuff added to that list. And so in lieu of dropping that amount to 24.1, which I think is really wishful thinking and probably unrealistic, we should keep that at 25. And I also think that we should find a way to utilize the fund balance sooner than later to get that project going, because I've heard a few comments saying or suggesting that these guys haven't worked to raise money. And that's just not true. They have worked. They've raised $300,000. And I don't think it's unreasonable for other business owners in this community to want to see the district behind it, right? I think if they see the district is ponying up $900,000 or whatever it's going to cost, I think that makes it a lot easier for the other local businesses to invest, right? Because they don't want to carry all the weight on their own shoulders. And I don't think they should, frankly. I think this should have been done a long time ago. And I feel bad for those players that they have to play on that surface. They've got a championship program, and they got a field that doesn't represent how good they are and how proud we are of all of them. So my thoughts are we can do both, right? We can get the 25 million, which is still not going to be enough, but at least they could start the process. And we can get that program what it needs, and we can get it something our community can all be proud of.
Okay. Anything further on the amendment?
Well, it's not on the amendment exactly, it's pertaining to the vote.
I waited for everybody to speak because I wanted to hear everybody, and thank you very much for everybody's opinions. I think everybody has great points. I agree with everybody, to be honest with you. The only thing that I'm not hearing anybody talk about, which I'm kind of going to bring up now, is with our critical infrastructure needs, I wanted to have that same conversation alongside with right-sizing the district for our declining enrollment. So I haven't heard anybody talk about that, and I feel like the conversation was really wonderful. Some of it got in the SHIT and you know, for the porta potty stuff, but at the same time, I understand why he's talking about it, so I get it. It's just, I would like to see us kind of understand, now I'm going to summarize what we just talked about. We're essentially asking our finance director to write a resolution so that we can ask the constituents of this community if they would like us to have the ability to borrow about $25 million to make critical infrastructure needs. And he's saying that he's structuring it into borrowing just to keep the levy as low as possible and to put ourselves in a good position. So that's why they would be asking for as a borrowing. So I agree with all of that. It's just we are not talking about if the community does approve that $25 million for critical needs, which we obviously need about 45 at the minimum. So how are we going to spend that most efficiently? Making sure that we make that investment have higher return, making sure we're using it on buildings that we're going to be having in the long term. So that's the part of the conversation that I'm not hearing, and it's concerning to me. And I understand the baseball thing got brought into this, and it kind of muddled it all now. And there's an amendment and then another amendment. So I'm ready to vote on it, and I understand everybody's opinion. So thank you very much. Yes, sir. Just one final point that I thought might be helpful for a lot of people, and maybe I'll ask this to Ken just because you've got probably the most qualifications to answer it, but could you just give a high level comparison or difference between, you know, because we're talking referendum, right? And I think people hear referendum, they automatically assume it's going to be like a operating referendum like we've had or a capital referendum. And this is a little bit different because it's a borrowing referendum, the way I understand it. So would you please just take a moment and just explain the difference between those three?
Okay, yeah. Operating referendum, and there's two kinds of operating referendums, recurring and non-recurring. The one that we're on is non-recurring. So after 2028, I think it's 28, so don't quote me on that. Then we have to come back to the taxpayers to do a non-recurring referendum. It means it's not in the levy itself. We just have authorization to go up so much each year. Now, a borrowing is we take the money and it's used for construction projects. You can't go out and use it for anything else but construction projects. So say $25 million. It will go on the levy too. It's sort of a top of the other one. So you have your regular levy for operations, and then you have this capital one. The idea is you don't have to structure that. You got to pay it back, say $1 million each year. Just use that as an example. I can pay interest for a little while, interest in a principal a little bit while, and then try to even it out so I can bring the levy down and make it somewhat equal. The difference is this one will go on the levy for that period of time, which is probably 20 some years. It'll be on the levy for that long. Finally paid off in year, say it's a 20-year tax one. That would be year 2044, 2045, because it's 45 we're going to do it. And that will be the year we make the final payment on it as such. So it is structured differently, and like the non-recurring, it's done in 2028. And then we go back to taxpayers and ask for some more. One comment. We tried 1 year with recurring, and it got chopped down. So we're not ever going to do it again because the taxpayers see it's always in there. So I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, and real quick, just to clarify my understanding, but the way that I understand it is if we do a borrowing referendum, we're paying that back through funds the district already has, right? We're not like necessarily like raising new funds from taxpayers.
You are raising new funds for taxpayers.
Okay, so it's,
But we'll make it within the structure, we'll cut some, we have some areas that we over budgeted the last few years. So it will, yes, eventually,
Yeah, say,
down the road.
just 1 second, a borrowing referendum, if passed by the voters, gives you the authorization to levy for the costs of the payback of the borrowing, the principal and interest that you scheduled, without affecting the state set limitations on your levying for operations. Whether or not you do that is up to each individual district, but you are allowed to do them separately. Obviously, they stack as one levy when you present it to people, but yeah, it does not automatically go into your current levy and go into your current levy limits. It's its own limits.
I don't know if this will help. So I'm just trying to communicate to the taxpayers. It's kind of like taking a equity line out on your property, essentially. So we're asking, the taxpayers would be saying, hey, we would like to take an equity line out against the district, a loan, so that then the district can make improvements, and we're gonna structure it probably in a 20-year note.
Yes, you could use.
I'm trying to
that.
articulate
So
it to the-
And then you build it within your own
Yes,
budget.
so then obviously the taxpayers wouldn't see an increase on their tax bill right away because you would structure that lending into your budget.
That's correct.
And then you would pay it back
Yes,
with principal and interest over the next 20 years.
Right, we stretch
And
it
then
out.
this would be step one of I don't want to forecast, but obviously it would be step one of probably 4 or 5 of loans eventually to make all the improvements. But financially, this is probably the most wisest way to structure lending, or to have it as a loan, to not affect the taxpayers at the moment and build capital improvements into the district sooner than later at a low interest rate, relatively speaking, because it's public borrowing.
That is correct. And it may have more steps than that. When principals do, you send out a note, and this one's due in 2035, this one's due in 2036. So it's structured that way, but that's a great example. Yes.
yeah. I was just to reiterate what Matt was saying, so if we used another, let's just say we did a capital referendum versus a borrowing referendum, then we would see a big increase in the tax bill this year and beyond versus the way that this is structured, because it's structured to be more neutral on the taxpayer.
We're going to make it more neutral.
Yeah.
That's what we're going to, that's the plan, to make it more neutral. Yes.
Mr. Spalding?
I just wanted to reiterate a little bit with what Matt was saying before, is that I think it's good, but I hope that we bring up in conversation very soon. Lee brought up earlier about our total property value of 338 million, and I think we had some sort of a study done as to what percentage of that we're not using. We can bring that down. We really need to get that back up on the table and talk about what we talked about already before, consolidating and getting rid of the places that we're not using. That would also help a lot, but I digress. Go ahead.
Anything further on the amendment to lower the borrow by 900,000?
Can you
And
finish?
send,
Yeah, can he restate that?
and send the 900,000
Fund balance.
fund balance.
Well, back to facilities and finance to work
To
with the
develop a
group,
plan
to
for that,
develop a
yes.
plan, to get it through fund balance, right? Right.
I'm gonna vote no only because I think we need more than 25 million. So I think reducing that amount is probably not a good idea.
Okay.
We haven't really clarified yet, have we, whether we're,
This is just the amendment.
If
Yes.
we're asking for the 25, or whether.
The original motion was 25 million?
The original is
25.
I think the, yeah.
And this amendment is for 24-1?
This would bring it down to 24-1.
Right, and I guess, can I ask a quick follow-up question? Which I think is relevant for people voting. You know, Mike, do you think that we have given the magnitude of projects that we're doing right now, do you think we have enough contingency built into it? Or do you think it would be better to have more cushion there?
You mean like $900,000 worth, or is that what you're saying to keep it at?
Yeah.
Oh.
I'd be more comfortable with more contingency in there.
Who would? I wasn't born yesterday.
And that was, it was 48 million, right? Was what that study came back with?
Yes.
Okay. And so if we got the 25 million approved, do you think we find another $900,000 worth of projects that we can do?
Yes.
Okay.
Now I'll stay up later.
Great. All right. So the first proposed amendment, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. And opposed, say no.
No.
Could I see the nays? 2. So that passes 5-2. So it is now at a borrowing of 24.1 million for
Stuff that needs to be done.
capital.
Critical
improvements. Yeah, critical capital improvements. I put it in that. Any other motions to amend?
No, I was
No.
discussing.
Hang on. Any other motions to amend? Okay, seeing no others, I have a motion to amend. I move that we remove the 1.5 million of contingency. Looking for a second?
Explain that.
Okay, seeing none, that dies. You get to explain when you get a second.
Yeah.
So, seeing none,
Wait,
that dies.
can you repeat that?
I move to remove the 1.5 million in contingency funds, which is on page 7. But that's, I for one of a second.
I'll second it for discussion.
I have to remove it, so I'm really not going to go backwards.
Now, can I make a motion to, and if I
You can move anything you want.
can I make a motion to go back to the original $25 million borrow versus the 24.1?
That would be,
That would essentially be asking us to reconsider the motion for the 900,000, which you can do at the same meeting where the motion was made. But, and you can do it because you voted in favor of the motion.
Yes.
If you had voted against, you could not.
Right, I voted favor, but
And you did that so that you could ask to not do it now?
that's correct.
You are like Wile E. Coyote. You know that?
I have an amendment, maybe possibly, if you're able to.
If I can do that, I'm going to make a motion.
You can move
I'm going to make a motion
to reconsider
To
the
reconsider
900,000.
the 24.1 and go back to the original 25,000 based on the fact, or 25 million, yeah, thank you. Based on the fact that will allow a variance for costs and expensing and different projects.
Can I move to amend that? We
We don't have a
Hold on,
second.
on here,
We don't have a second to that, so you can't amend it yet.
I just want to hear what he's saying.
Okay, I was just gonna
Because it
say-
might be your second.
can we remove that, the part under the municipal baseball field, and move that 900,000 to the contingency that you wanted to remove, and make that 2.4 million contingency instead of 1.5? And that way, it's a contingency.
I will amend my motion to that.
I was just thinking maybe wording that might be,
I'll amend my motion to that.
Okay, hang on here. I do not want people to get angry with me,
no,
but I want to be honest, okay? So we have your motion and we have your second. My concern here is, and it is very clear and it's deliberate, this was not moved nor accepted. So I attempted to amend this at the Facilities and Finance meeting and was told I could not because this wasn't being considered, only the total dollar amount. So you can say, put it back in, but be explicit that it's not to be used for the baseball field because that's being referred to Facilities and Finance. and that would work. But since this document itself isn't being moved, you can add and remove anything you want, but how relevant it is, I don't know, because the document itself isn't being accepted.
You lost me so far in Robert's rule, it was ridiculous. So you just tell me what you want from me, I don't know.
Yeah, but I'm saying you can do it. How sticky it is, I don't know. But I think we're still gonna get the, how well it'll stick, you know?
Make it as sticky as you can, I guess.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do for you. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. I got a plan to fix that one.
Lori wants to.
Yeah. The motion and the second
I'm
is,
really getting confused.
the motion and the second is to return the 900,000, so go back to a borrow of 25 million.
Right, from 24.1 back to 25 million to allow the variance to.
But with the 900,000 added to contingency, so that it now, instead of being 1.5, it's 2.4, because the baseball field isn't changing the process on it, it stays where it's going.
Holy Christ, Biff's about to screw it up again. I'm just kidding.
I'm actually gonna go to Superintendent Tennis first, because he's been so patient. Hasn't he?
Yeah. I appreciate the conversation very much. I just wanted to point out, just for the board and the public, why the list itself wasn't exactly tied to what we were asking. So this list is most clearly what our priorities are for maintenance. When you pass a list, you're also, you're giving, the intent that this is going to happen exactly the way it is. What I would tell you is, and this is just what I'm cautioning us, and if we want to, we can make this the in-stone list, but we're probably likely going to have to come back to it and make amendments or changes to it. And here's why. You're going to take, it would be 3.5 years at least from today for us to exhaust the capital that we're going to borrow on these projects. Last week alone, we had a failed boiler in an elementary school. There will be things that supersede things on this list. I can just about guarantee it. And I just don't want to send the wrong message to the public that from time to time, we won't have to reassess this particular list over the next couple of years. Because frankly, leaks start like this, or a boiler fails like this. We have aged schools. I think Ken was talking about earlier. The average life expectancy of a school is 50 to 75 years. At our secondary schools, they're beyond that by a lot. So that was the purpose of not tying the list exactly directly to the dollar amount. Now, I'm completely comfortable with the board saying that they want this list documented as the list. I just want to be clear with the public and the board that there may be time to time in the next couple of years, we have to look at amending it based on critical needs that pop up that are absolutely necessary, like heating our schools for children. And I just wanted to make that point.
Certainly. We have the motion, we have the second. Yeah.
I had a question. I'm not seconding the motion.
No, he moved, he seconded.
Ken, contingency is what we might spend it on in case we need to expend it on, correct? If it says
Contingency, I'll just use a football field as an example. They had an X amount of costs and they had like 25%, 10% contingency in the end. Because 10% you don't know the unknowns when you do building projects or any kind of project. So contingency is things like that. But it's also, now, the short time frame for a football field. Now, this is going to be 3 years. We have 3 years to expend it. And Matt brought up the thing about the plan. And truthfully, the plan's got to be in that picture too. How much money are we going to spend on some schools that may not be in that, maybe plan to close or anything like that?
Yeah.
So some of the contingency, some of the earlier projects will do do those early as we do this together. Now contingency is just that. Comes up, boiler goes out. That's it, either. It's not in the list. Contingency is some other thing comes in play that we don't know. Tuck pointing, boilers, what's some of the big items?
Asphalt is big.
Asphalt, rust, things like that. Those are all contingencies.
So where does 1.5 come from? Is that a percentage of how much we're asking for? Or is that,
It's like around percentage, yes, just number.
well, here's my concern with what we're talking about is we told the public a couple months ago we wouldn't give money when we weren't sure what we were gonna do. And now you're saying, let's put 2.6 million in a fund that we're not sure how we're gonna use it. That's more than the contingency. That's 900,000 more than what they were asking for contingency. What are we spending that 900,000 on? We have to have, and there's a list, and I know the list isn't final because things can come up, but the public has to trust us when we're asking for money in a vote to say, this is what we're doing. And now we're throwing 900,000 back in when there's no plan for that 900,000. We'll pick something else off the list of that we have to do on the next list. Well, I'm not sure that's a good idea. We told them this is what we're doing this time, and now, okay, we're gonna put some more money in there. That, I don't think, based on how close the last referendum was, I think we have to be very clear on what everything is getting spent on in this asking from the public.
I agree with that, but I think that we could write an adequate proposal that would allow us some flexibility in the motion. I mean, I would vote in favor of returning it to the 25 million. But I think that, I also agree that we should tell the public in an official and formal way what we're committed to spending that on. But then have a loophole, which is not a good word for this, but a further explanation saying that this borrowing, this loan also will accommodate unforeseen high priority projects that we will of course be responsible for taking care of.
Mr. Blastoff. Thank you. Yeah, I think Gary raised a good point, and Biff, just to answer your question, I mean, even if we had hard numbers for all those projects today, and we said, go, let's get these done in the next 3 years, and here's the timeline we're gonna do those projects in, because we're not gonna do them all tomorrow. There's a very high likelihood that just the nature of, costs and the economic climate as it has been, costs change, right? In 3 months and 6 months. So like just by that alone, it would be very difficult to give taxpayers a 3-year plan and say, we're not going to deviate from this by 1 cent, because that's just not reality.
Yeah, that's right.
And so I think the contingency really just kind of gives us a little bit of buffer. And the way I understand it, and me and Mike, please chime in if I'm misunderstanding it at all, but this is really just saying, here's the dollar amount we're requesting, which is, 25 million. We already have a $48 million identified need. It's not like we have a $10 million need and we're asking for 25 million. We have a $48 million need and we're asking for 25 million. And these are the priority projects out of that list that we deem are most urgent, that need to be addressed. And, here's approximate costs, right? And then once approved, once we have the 25 million approved, for that, if the public approves that, they can go on and start implementing those projects.
Yeah.
So that's really what this is. It's not like, it's just very difficult, I think. And I get what you're saying, because I think it's prudent, right? Because you want to be prudent, but like in construction, and Matt, you can probably speak to this too, it's probably not uncommon that stuff changes, man, in like 3 months and 6 months and 9 months. So it's really difficult to get it down to the exact dollar. So contingencies are pretty common is what I'm getting at.
I understand that. My concern is the contingency was 1.5. Now we're making it 2.6.
Right. And again,
That's 900,000 more than what they were saying the contingency needed to be.
the need is 48 million. So it's not like,
We're not talking 48 million now. We're talking 20.
How much
We're
is
talking
it?
these projects.
right, well, they're all critical projects. That's what I'm saying. It's 48 million in critical maintenance.
I think we have a motion to return it to 25 million. I think that we
Yeah, right.
25 million.
Total package.
So that's what we should vote on now, and then we should have another motion after that to adopt the list with flexibility. Okay?
Well, you can't talk about another motion until we
I
finish.
know, but I'm saying,
Don't try to cheat.
but
You're
we're talking
trying to
about,
cheat.
we're talking about
Play
stuff
fair.
that isn't.
Play fair,
for the motion.
play fair. You know the rules. Okay, so any other discussion on this motion, which is to move the 900,000 that was previously moved back into the borrowing and put it under contingency, so contingency becomes 2.4 million? Yes, sir.
Ken, when would the resolution be ready for the board to review?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
When would the resolution be ready for the board to review?
The resolution will be, oh boy.
Because I think-
I'll just read what it's going to say. It's basically, it will take only a few days because it's all template, they have a template and everybody in the school district follows it. Shall the Manitowoc School District, Wisconsin authorized to issue pursuant to chapter 67 of Wisconsin statutes obligate, general obligation bonds in the amount not to exceed 25 million or 24.1 for the public purpose of paying the cost of school buildings and facility improvement projects consisting of, and they give an example consisting of, it might be tuck point, roofs, all that kind of stuff. But that will be it. So it's really, that will be done probably within the, Thanksgiving, depending upon the attorney and that, probably next week.
Okay,
The resolution.
I just wanted to see it before it gets.
Yeah. It should be available in December if we approve it in January.
Can you ask that? Did we vote on that, or is it all?
Yeah, you do vote
Thank
on
you,
that.
that's what I'm asking.
What Ken will do is prepare the resolution and then the structure of the debt.
I got that, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so on the amendment, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no.
No.
No. Can I see the noes? That passes 5-2. It's like that's going to be the ratio tonight, for those of you who like ratios. Okay, so
love ratios.
we have those two. Now, sir, if you would like to make a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the list, the list that's in caps.
Capital Improvement Plan.
Yep.
2025. Okay,
With a,
as amended.
as amended.
It's been amended as we've talked. so-
Yes, it has, as amended. That we accept the list as the projects to be taken on, but allowing for flexibility for unforeseen needs.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion on this one?
Mr. President, if I could just.
Yeah.
And for general understanding of the board, what we would do in that case is if there were needs, we would bring them through Finance and Facilities Committee for your approval.
Do we? Hang.
Okay, we can structure, because we'll have reports and that, after 6 months, come to the board and tell you what's the project, how we doing on the projects and how it affects the list. And then after a year, so every 6 months, we'll come back with how the money was spent. And so you'll keep up on that, I'm sorry.
Mr. Glasgow.
You're good. No, Carrie, I like the motion. I just think maybe we should be more specific that if it's not implied somehow that it relates to critical facilities needs
Yeah, I think
and not
that's,
like other areas.
I think it has to be facilities.
okay, well, we could change that by giving the list a title, basically, for critical, what was the phrase you used?
I just wanted to make sure it's just for critical facilities needs and not other
Right.
needs.
The list of critical facility needs
Okay.
that we have with allowance for flexibility to respond to unforeseen needs.
I'll stay with my second for that change.
Okay. Any other discussion on this?
I think it's a really good idea. Obviously tying the lending to that exact document as a template for the district supervisor. Thank you.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. No. See, it went 6-1 that time.
Yeah, the.
I knew it was gonna
shoot the
change
ratio,
up.
yeah.
Okay. Any other amendments? Then we're back to the original motion. We're literally back to the original motion of preparing for referendum for 25 million for capital needs. Critical capital needs. if you prefer.
Do you want me to read this again, or
No,
you
borrowing.
or you
We're
have it?
borrowing of it.
I would have to read it off.
Okay, here's the original motion. To direct administration to prepare a resolution and long-term debt structure for borrowing of $25 million to cover the cost of critical maintenance and facility upgrades in the Mantua Public School District and will not add to the tax levy. I'm going to pass this to Lori.
I'll second. Or you don't need a second?
Yeah, you do.
You made that.
I made a
motion.
motion.
You pass it on down. Sign it and pass it on. No, I'm just joking. You don't sign it and pass it down. That's so that Lori has the whole thing.
Oh, that's the motion.
All right. So no further discussion on it? No discussion on it. We're back to the original motion.
So I just want to clarify then, the baseball field is off and going back to committee? Is that right?
It goes back to facilities and finance for discussion and more direction. Yes. Nobody? Nobody? Okay, so then before I take the vote, I want to be very clear that I will not be voting for this. I will not be voting for this for the same reason that I opposed it 5 months ago when we first brought it up. 2.5 million of unspecified spending that we're borrowing for is not fiduciarily responsible. As an elected official, I have a fiduciary responsibility. In fact, I wanted the 900,000 out. In fact, I wanted the 1.5 million out. I am well aware that would have brought us down to 22.6. To be clear, I have wanted from the beginning for us to plan for more work and borrow for less. There are 2 reasons for this. One, it builds credibility with the public. Here's all the stuff we got to do. We're borrowing for not enough to do all of it. Second, I believe profoundly in the craftsmen, the builders, the construction people who support and love our public schools. And I was positive, and I am still positive, that they will provide the kind of support that will allow us to get far more work done for 22.6 million than you would believe. I would believe it's going to be 25, 26, 27, maybe 28. It is amazing how supportive these people are, the people in the trades, when the need is there for their community. And I commend them for it. I also understand that because, honestly, as an elementary teacher, I am completely used to doing a whole lot with a whole little every single year. Teachers out there know exactly what I'm saying because that's how the system works. And I think as a district, we should do the same. Okay, so I won't support it. I understand, though, that it's probably going to go 5-2 or 6-1, and I'll sleep fine. Yes, sir.
I would just like to add that our district has identified over approximately $48 million worth of need. And I will sleep well at night knowing that I'm supporting solving a lot of those problems.
And I also want to add that I think it's being honest, having that 2.5 million in there, because we guarantee that we're not going to be able to allocate exactly this amount of money for this exact project for this, and it's going to cost that in the next few years. This is being as honest as we can and letting them know, hey, this is the projects that we got. We need a lot more, but bare minimum, and we're probably gonna need 10% to adjust and for contingencies. I think that's an honest way to do it, but yeah. So I'd be in support of it.
I'd just like to say that I appreciated the eloquent presentation by the chairman, by the president. Couldn't agree with him more in many ways, but we're not compelled to spend every dime that we ask for. But we do have almost unlimited need. So I just think that, cutting it too tight leaves us in an awkward situation. I'll vote for the motion.
Anything further? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, I'll say nay. 5-2 again.
We got 5-2 again.
All circles around. Like a kid's story. Okay, future meeting dates. The policy and personnel and policy, I'm not sure the order of those two, has now been moved to December 4th at 3:30, correct, sir? Yeah. And curriculum instruction has also been moved to the 4th at 5 p.m., I believe?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So those are moved there. That covers future meeting dates. And of course, on the 10th, we have the regular meeting of the board, by which point we may have a resolution for everyone to ooh and ah at. To ooh and ah at.
Oh.
I'm going to take one quick moment of privilege. I'll have more to say about this on the 10th. I do want to remind people that starting next week, spring election cycle literally starts because paper filing starts next week. So I have a lot more to say on the 10th, but I want to say this very friendly, very, very friendly. Public comment at our board meetings is a limited forum. It is not an open public forum. It is inappropriate to use it to campaign for political office, regardless of what office that is. I will certainly go more in depth on this on the 10th, but I just wanted to give everybody a little heads up so nobody shows up on the 10th with a great electioneering speech written and find that they can't give it. Okay? So thank you all, and I would look for a motion to adjourn. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second. Oh, go ahead.
We have a second from Mr. Hanson. All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Even I voted for that one. We are adjourned.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Yeah, you too.